Good evening. I'm Gary Braunbeck, and I have been Betsy's mentor for the past 2 terms, and it's a genuine pleasure to be able to stand here tonight and introduce her to read from Warrior Chosen. And early on, we had a conversation about the use of religious Christian, Jewish / insert religious here beliefs in fantasy fiction, or just in genre fiction in general. Now, a lot of emerging writers in the field of Christian fantasy or Christian science fiction or Christian horror, and there is such a thing, have a tendency to put the message before the story. And as a result, a lot of them manage to produce works that, while they are commonly written, come across as, at best, didactic and at worst, preachy. Well, we didn't have this problem, which really surprised me. And I told you that. I told you that when you came by Columbus that one day for lunch. The spirituality that emerges throughout the novel comes from the inner belief of each of the characters who populate the world. And it also comes from the clash of various beliefs as the characters encounter one another on the battlefield, off the battlefield, staring at the stars, sometimes standing over the grave of a friend. And this is the way that any type of spiritual themed fiction should unfold. Now, outside of the fact that it's a very deeply felt and thoughtful piece of work, it's also funny, it's terribly romantic in places, and it's quite exciting as well. And she's going to be reading some sections from it tonight that rank among my favorites from the novel, so I'm going to shut up and we will welcome the hour, Betsy, if you would.
I'm going to start out with my list of thank yous, because it is extensive, and I know I will forget. I have written them because I am a writer, and when I know what to say in front of a crowd, I'm good, and otherwise I babble, as you are now witnessing. So since he's not on my paper, I'm going to thank Mike first. Mike Arnzen is here as a second judge of my defense, or so he's trying to convince me. I'm not scared of you.
Wait till you hear the question.
Yeah, those came from Scott, though. So anyway, one of my mentors wasn't able to be here tonight, and so Mike was very kind with it. So, as I'm sure most of you know, or are about to find out, depending on where you are in the program, this is not the kind of thing that someone can do on their own, either the grad school part or the writing a novel part. And my list of little things, as I said, is a long one. First and forever, to my husband Matt, who will be here on Wednesday, who cooked, cleaned, took the dog out, and endured both my excited babbling and my lethargic moping, depending on how I felt about the manuscript at any given time. I would not describe myself as a naturally stable person, and Matt is my anchor and my balance, and without his support and encouragement, I certainly never could have done this. To my parents and my family, both the one I was born into and the one I married into, it's no secret that writers often vacillate between supreme confidence in their brilliance and utter certainty that they lack any kind of talent, any kind of talent. And my family is good for my ego in both extremes. They take me down and build me. More specifically, thanks to Mom for hanging around at residencies and being my go-to girl when I just need somebody to call and tell what is going on. Thanks to my dad, who is not here tonight, but will be here Wednesday, for brainstorming sessions and feedback. Most of all, for telling me that I am not normal and I should not pretend to be. And thanks to my mother-in-law, Jessie, for her help with the Hebrew, which was, I based a lot of language stuff over that. Anything I got right is because of her. Anything I got wrong is because I also want to thank all my friends and youth group kids and coworkers in Colorado. And even though she's not here and none of you know her, Mary Jane Dameron, beta reader and grammarian extraordinaire, was always ready and willing to lend a foot when I needed a kick in the seat to get working again. So, like I said, long list. Everyone involved with the program, students, mentors, instructors, Wendy Lynn, who doesn't get enough credit, has contributed to the fact that I'm standing here now. Matt Donahue and Sherry Peters, been my critique partners from pretty much the very beginning, and their contributions cannot possibly be summarized here. And a very special thanks to my mentors, Gary Braunbeck and Scott Johnson, who taught me that horror writers are not nearly as scary as they like everyone to believe. Sorry to blow your cover, guys. They also refused to let me get away with anything. I know that Scott's not here, but I cannot properly thank him without mentioning the certain dangers of horse thrall.
7 minutes before you mention that. You'll have to let him know.
Yeah. I brought it up though.
Yep.
You should tell him. All right. They taught me the art of subtlety. They buoyed my flagging spirits on a regular basis, and both more than once weathered the storm of my brilliant ideas. I can only imagine the horror it must have struck in their hearts to get the emails from me saying, I just had the most amazing idea, and it means everything has to change, but I'm sure I can get it done in the week and a half before the next deadline. Don't worry, it'll be great. But here I am, and we made it through, and no one died. At least no one in the real world. And now it's time for my thesis. Yay! My thesis, A Warrior Chosen, this is from my genre essay. Yay, isn't it nice? Continues the Tolkienian tradition of secondary world fantasy, set in a culture inspired by the biblical Hebrew tribes, adding elements of the divine supernatural in the spirit of Stephen R. Lawhead's Dragon King saga, and a strong heroine in the vein of Elizabeth Moon's Paxtonarian and Robin McKinley's Harmad Soul, who is paired, the heroine, with paired equally with a non-romantic hero. Say that 10 times fast. I practiced that. With A Warrior Chosen, I wanted to create a world that was not reliant on the now traditional medieval backdrop of most epic fantasy. Although both of my main characters were born and raised in a country with a social structure that's based on the early English Regency, the bulk of the narrative takes place with a semi-nomadic tribe along the border of a desert. For the heroine, this is almost her own secondary world. Removed from her familiar environment, Karis is more receptive to vastly different customs, beliefs, and expectations about the world. The most significant of these differences is that Karis comes from a country that recognizes no gods, indeed a territory where no supernatural powers are active. And she finds that the nomadic people believe in one supreme god called Hagabor, who protects and guides them. Though initially she dismisses this belief, over time Karis cannot deny the evidence that, supreme god or not, something beyond her experience is indeed involved in the fate and actions of these men and women. Furthermore, there are signs that Karis herself has been chosen by Hagabor as a holy warrior, endowed in times of great need with supernatural skill as she fights alongside the nomads. In the end, Karis realizes that although her path seems to have been marked out in advance, she has freely chosen all of her actions, and she embraces her status and ability as a warrior chosen by God. The idea that divine planning and free individual choice are not mutually exclusive is an important one to the text. If a benign divinity has intimate knowledge of an individual, it only makes sense that any divine plan would be fitted to the individual's natural wills and desires, not set in opposition to them. The novel's hero is Devlin, whose central conflict is really working through deep grief. He has suffered the loss of his sister and his best friend, both in situations that he considers his own fault, and he struggles to make sense of their deaths. He clings to their memory and to the idea that he should have saved them both, even as he tries to reject every other reminder of the past. He must realize that he cannot ignore history without also damaging the future. Devlin can be described as a horizontal hero who seeks a wholeness or synthesis of relationships in terms of this world, a horizontal continuity of community and history. Karis might be described as the vertical heroine of this tale. Her focus is on the relationship between man and the divine. The text tells the story of her journey to become the sort of hero who can invoke divine power to right the world's wrongs. Devlin, on the other hand, is primarily concerned with human connections. In this and many other ways, Devlin and Karis are two sides of the same coin. They develop a strong fraternal bond and partnership, complementing and completing one another without losing their individual identities. In fact, their identities are confirmed and strengthened, and their friends are safe by